The hand signals are helpful tools. They're not consensus in and of themselves, but they're helpful tools, especially in large groups. And so, like this, the twinkles mean that you like something, and this means that you're so-so about something, and this means that you don't really like something. And then this is a point of information. So if you have a factual thing that you want to communicate to someone, then you use a point of information. This is a point of process. So if you have a concern about or suggestion about how the process should go, then you do the point of process. And this is a direct response, although direct response is not something that we've tried not to use direct response because it generally means that you're jumping stack. It's an excuse to jump stack, and so that's not something that we've been using so much. This is a clarifying question, which also is something that we're trying not to use very much, but people use it, and people develop hand signals as needed. During the Spokes Council days, when things got really tense, people would use this as a way to have like a really big point of process, and it meant respect the House. So I don't know. They're tools.
What's a Spokes Council?
Spokes Council is a horizontal formation of small groups. Small groups that have some kind of affinity, whether it's through political affinity or through a day-to-day task that they're involved with. So they share something that binds them together. That's enough to have a group cohesion. And so you have this constellation of groups, of small groups in a circle, and each small group has a spoke, and a spoke is much like a delegate in the sense that that they rotate and that they don't have any decision-making ability on their own. They have to consult with members of their group. And so, like, if I were in, the media group, and we had a spoke for a meeting, that spoke would turn around and discuss whatever proposal came up with members of the media group who are in attendance. So that's generally how it works. It's a way to scale and be horizontal because you have small groups doing particular tasks, certain specializations and other affinities. So rather than having 5,000 person General Assembly, you have 500 working groups or affinity groups. And so it's a way to address the question of scale primarily. Spokes councils were used by the Iroquois Confederacy in the U.S. They've been used, they were used in the Spanish Civil War by the CNT and FAI, which were anarchist unions that were very prominent in the 20s and 30s during wartime. And in the U.S., most recently, they've been used in Women's Lib and the anti-nuclear movement. There are a couple of examples, pretty prominent examples of, thousands and thousands of people participating in spokes councils during the anti-nuke movement in order to shut down nuclear power plants. And then again, in the anti-globalization or ultra-globalization movement of the late 1990s, early 2000s, they used spokes councils to organize direct actions against the WTO, World Bank, IMF. And so they're a useful tool. Spokes councils are a form that allows many different kinds of people to come together and act together collectively, and they also allow for a degree of autonomy and anonymity if needed. So like in an action scenario, you don't need to know, if people are doing high-risk actions, you don't need to know like everything that they're doing. but you need to know like how they're going to relate to other groups and other actions that are planned. And so Spokes Council allows that to happen. So like during the WTO in Seattle, we used a Spokes Council to negotiate relationships between the Black Bloc and the nonviolent direct action people, the creative direct action people, and the unions, who all had different tactics but wanted to shut down this one meeting together. So it made sense, like space, time, common goal, all enabled them to come together around this larger goal. But having very different politics and very different tactics. So, yeah, Spokes Councils.
What's the difference between working groups, and clusters?
So working groups are like committees. They're like a horizontal form of a committee. So working groups form to take on particular tasks, like to do media or sanitation or kitchen or what have you. And clusters are just formations of many groups. So it could be many working groups, many affinity groups. They're just larger formations.
It seems like everything is very fragmented and decentralized now. How do you still connect with each other? How do you collectively, like, why is it still collectively called Occupy?
Strike Debt came out of the Occupy movement. It came out of people who were very integral to the starting of Occupy Wall Street. And so all the same principles and practices come up in Strike Debt. So in that sense, it's part of Occupy Wall Street today. And then Occupy Sandy, uses the Occupy name, and I'm not sure to what degree we'll use the principles and practices going forward. But yeah, we are very fragmented at the moment. And there has to be a balance between the community and autonomy, and we haven't quite arrived at that balance. But I am planning a vision session at the end of the month in which we will discuss these things and figure out, what Occupy 2.0 looks like. So, yeah, hopefully we'll come to a better balance.
How it seems like a very complicated structure and process. When you go into neighborhoods, people that don't necessarily know much about Occupy, how long does it take for them to learn, or are they accepting of this process and the structure? Are there any difficulties?
Well, there are difficulties in making any kind of transition. We live in a hierarchical, patriarchal, racist, horrible society in which we never have a say in the decisions that affect us. We're constantly told what to do. And so people just internalize that, and their first reaction is like, well, aren't you going to tell me what to do? Someone always tells me what to do. And so you have to make this conscious effort to break these patterns of behavior. And that takes a while, it takes, it's not something that you just, do automatically. And, even if you've been doing it for a long time, you still kind of struggle to live up to the ideal. But it's worth trying for the ideal. Otherwise, what are we doing?